Hello, welcome to True Hoop with me, Jarod Hector, and Coach David Thorpe. How are you, sir?
I am well, my friend. How are you?
I am well. And True Hoop CEO, Henry Abbott. How are you?
Just dropping by for a little bit. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. How's the book process going?
It's over there's a binder and a red pen, and it's like literally what you think. It's just like, is there a space after the period? Is there not a space? It's my like, I kind of, in a way, I'm like, whatever, man, who cares? But then I'm like, no, this thing is like the thing I put the most work into of anything in my life. And if they print however many copies are out there, and I'm like, that goddamn chapter 5 has no space after the period. Like, this is my last chance to address that. So
Yeah.
like, it's stressful, Draw. Is how it is.
Well, listen, those of us who grew up going to school in an era without, where we didn't hand assignments in emailed on computers, that was the fear. You got back a report, and it had the teacher's red, because you could see it when she's handing it back, or he. And if you see red coming your way, you're like, shit, lots of red lines. This is not going to be a good grade.
It's a weird kind of test because it's like, I don't know. So it's in your driving test, like everyone's like, oh, the parallel parking is hard. Okay, that's the hard part. This test is all easy. Every single thing is driving 35 on an open road. And it's like, did you see the missing space? Like none of it. It's just a test of like, can you pay attention?
Yes.
Can you look? It's like the answer is like sometimes, the answer is like no one's a perfect copy editor, know, like it's just a little, you just have to like.
Oh, I mean, how many times have you read a book and you're like, shit, they forgot the space? It happens.
It happens all the time. Yeah. Yeah. And
everyone
listening to this will buy this book, and then you might be like, busted. Gotcha.
All right. Well, Henry's on for a specific reason, because some news came out last week that we sort of talked about in our True Hoop chat, but we didn't really give any thoughts to it. And I thought it'd be good now to sort of put it out there. A former Clippers strength and conditioning coach named Randy Shelton is suing the team for what he alleges as wrongful termination, in part for raising concerns about the management of Kawhi Leonard's health and injuries. Part of that lawsuit also says the Clippers tampered with Kawhi Leonard all the way back to the time when he was with the San Antonio Spurs. This is, of course, a hot button issue because Kawhi is always injured and never playing. And, as we've done on this podcast before numerous times, he clearly has chronic injuries that he is dealing with that won't ever get better until the day he stops playing basketball, which I don't know when that's going to be. But anyway, I thought having you on here would be good because you're writing a book about the body. And also as an investigative journalist yourself, you might have some thoughts or questions about this lawsuit.
Well, I just thought it was an interesting peek. It's a little, we usually don't, all this stuff in this lawsuit usually happens behind the curtain, right? And it's just a rare little peek into Randy Shelton's version of events behind the curtain. And hats off to Baxter Holmes and Ramon Shelburne for giving us this peek. I'm telling you, the reason we usually don't get it is because nobody wants to piss off, in this case, you're pissing off Lawrence Frank, maybe the NBA, maybe Kawhi Leonard, all people that sports media usually kind of butter up, right? So we got this little peek. And a lot of it caught my attention. And would you indulge me in a little story from my own past, which is I was one of the first people to ever to do traffic reports on the radio in Madison, Wisconsin, which might seem irrelevant, but it's a boring job. But it's a lot of like, this, that, but then the weather comes, and in Wisconsin, it comes a lot and it comes hard. And one day I said something like, X, Y, and Z, I'm describing like the sleet or the snow or the whatever the terrible thing was that was happening from the sky. And then I said something like, be sure to bring your chains, or something that tiptoed into advice. And like, I would report these from a car on a cell phone. And I hung up, it was ringing as I hung it up. And it was my boss, who was a great boss. Shout out to Stephen Whitburn. He was like, I learned so much from that man. And he was like, basically, he's not a guy who really got mad. He was really too nice. I mean, we were great friends. He came over for dinner or whatever, but he was like, okay, so little note, like you're like a 19-year-old from Oregon and you're talking to like hardened Wisconsinites. Like, do not give them winter advice. He's like, just tell them what's happening.
Right.
Like, that's reporting, right? Like, okay, like I got it. And then later, I actually got busted on the same thing again at ESPN. I was writing something. I wrote some column for Troop when I was pretty new at ESPN, and editor Royce Webb was like, so let me get this right. This is advice. And I'm like, yeah, like that's nice, right? People think advice is nice, right? Or dumb shits think advice is nice, right? And And he was like, I just want you to know. He's like, I didn't end up getting my PhD, but I did I'm like all ABD, all but dissertation, right? With getting his PhD, basically racism in sports writing in America, right? And he's like, this is one of the hot button ones. Is like the white sports writer like gives advice to the much more accomplished person who they're writing about, right? Like, and so I was like, all right, I've actually heard this before, right? So, I've probably fucked up since then, but I'm very conscious of it. And like Matt Wong, I worked with for years, will tell you that we had a million meetings, and Matt people would use the word should. The word should would come up a lot, and I would always just like throw the brakes on and be like, we're really not in the should business. Like it's not like there's a certain way. Like David has spent his whole career in like, ooh, I think it's a little better if your hand's here on the ball, not here. Like, okay, I want to hear that, right? He's earned the right to be heard on that topic, right? But like all in all, sports fans and sports media love to just sit around and talk about how everyone should do stuff, right? Especially with this guy Kawhi, right? Like, poor guy. I mean, poor guy. He's a multi-millionaire. Right. I'm sure he's fine. Like, but he is like what, a decade into like the primary like thing that happens when his name comes up on ESPN or any other network is he should fill in the blank, play more, retire, or whatever. Stephen A's got a new Kawhi conviction every time he says his name, right? Like, and this lawsuit just makes me note that like we never knew shit, right? Like we never knew what was going on with Kawhi's body, right? Like in 2017, these are just some highlights from the article. There are more injuries, but he had severe ankle injury, followed by a right quad injury. Then he went to the Raptors. Then he tore his ACL in the 2021 playoffs. And the debate, according to this behind the scenes, was Randy Shelton, who we'd known since San Diego State, argued he should be out for 730 days.
Which 2 years.
It's just an incredible. I've never heard anybody being out for 730 days, but because of the like just coalition of injuries, they thought 2 years. There was a disagreement. He came back sooner, and then he quickly ruptured 2 ligaments in his right ankle, same side of his knee. Right, this is pretty common to have like the echo of the ACL. And so anyway, to me, like there's this just assemblage of injuries in that man's body, and every day there's a fight going on behind the scenes between people who love Kawhi and people who love Kawhi playing, and I can't argue that they got it right. Right. Like they maybe should have rested him less. Maybe should have rested him more. Maybe should have done everything differently. I don't know. But it has not been good. He's not too healthy. Right. He's super busted. Poor guy. Right. This is like a Michael Jordan level contributor who just like we haven't gotten the best version of him. We have several more of those around the league right now. One's named Zion. One's named Embiid. Right. Like, and like Ben Simmons. Like, yeah, there's so many of these guys who are like just gems. Right. And like, we're just not doing it well enough. It might be that the whole time they should be resting more. It might be the whole time they should be training differently. It might be the whole time. Like, we don't know. Right. Like, let's just report on the weather. Let's not tell them to bring chains. Right. Like, we don't know what they should do.
Right.
Well, we do know one thing, which is all those people saying they know what they're talking about don't. We know
exactly. This is the one thing we know, which is like not that fun of a fact. It's like, oh, geez, you guys just knock it off.
Now, clearly on this podcast, we started the show talking about calling ourselves comrades. So you could potentially argue that we have communist leanings, depending on what you're talking about. But we are pro player on this podcast, generally by and large, in almost every instance. Would it even matter if the Clippers decided, well, we're not going to give you an extension, right? So if they said, no, we're just going to not do it, right? So if he wasn't picked up by anybody and didn't get an extension, or let's say some other team picked him up, right, because he's a free agent, but didn't pay him 5 years for whatever those stupid supermax is, and decided, we're only going to go on like a smaller deal because we're not sure about your health. Would people care less if that were the case?
I mean, to me, it gets into this thing where like, Steve Ballmer makes this big investment in this player, builds a new stadium, charges a crap ton for season tickets, and just Steve Ballmer and, Adam Silver are selling to a large number of people an expensive product that stars Kawhi. But they don't really have Kawhi.
Right.
Like, not for 41 times a year, right? Like, right. I apologize. Everything's noisy in my house. The dog is ringing the bell to go out the back door. Now my phone's ringing. It's like not really a professional podcast presentation I've got here. But yeah, to me, like, I don't know. I've said this on this podcast before, but like, you know, if Walmart like has a sign that says like, you know, like Tide for $4.99, but they don't have Tide,
Right.
like who do you get mad at? It's like, well, in the NBA, weirdly, we're just getting mad at Tide.
Right.
Like,
Why are we mad
Walmart
at
said that shit.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Get mad at the
Like,
Walmart
what do
family.
we do? You know?
Exactly.
Kawhi would love to drag his healthy body out there and delight you with hammer dunks, right? But like, he doesn't have that right now, right? He's got all these torn things and unrecovered things, and you know, more to the point. Like, I think after all this research for the book and the decade before that of research that kind of circles the area, I'm like, I think we want to get players to play when they're ready to play, which isn't a feeling. Well, actually, I mean, it might be the player's feeling, but it's not like a trainer's feeling or a coach's feeling. It's not like fans' feeling. It's not Steve Ballmer's feeling. It's not Stephen A. fucking Smith's feeling, right? Like, you know, but you can measure. Like, there are things we can do. There's like, you know, there's a bunch of stuff we could do to assess like who's good to go.
Right.
And the answer is they probably won't be good to go 82 times a year.
Right. Well, no, we know that, right?
I mean, probably not. Like, I want to be open-minded. Like, we don't have a great number of super crazy elite athletes who train super well. Like, if we did, maybe we'd find that some of them really can, right? Like, but we don't have that, right? We have a bunch of people.
We have in modern NBA, LeBron, right? Not now because he's older. But
Bridges.
Yeah, Mikal Bridges is the Iron Man right now.
Well, we'll see how that works with Tom Thibodeau this season.
Yeah. I'm sure that's part of the reason the Knicks liked him so much, right? Like, oh, he never breaks. Let's get him, right? But yeah, but it's, you know, but like there's, you know, a pretty sophisticated data researcher told me that the NBA has a 100% injury rate. So like every time you play and stay healthy, you're just getting closer to your next injury, which is not true in every sport, right? But it's true in this sport. So,
and something too to add that regarding what we don't know, I got a text today from a coach, a front bench coach, and they were telling me the success of one of the players that I help that they know about, and mentioned, I know he's dealing with a sore knee. Now, I fucking talk to this player all the time. We text way more than we talk. No clue that he had a sore knee. The coaches knew. I have already sent out a pretty nasty message to the agents and trainers. Like, his personal was like, you may want to tell the actual personal coach that he's got a knee issue. And so if I don't know, there's no fucking way fans and reporters, not fans, media know at all. Right. They would never talk about this.
Yeah. Right.
And certainly not in full truth, you know?
And this is also, right, Henry, what we talk about on the show all the time, this is also the culture of sport, right? It is this jock, macho, right? Like, you play injured. We make, you know, Charles Barkley like another person on TV. You guys make $50 million a year and stay in like these fancy hotels. You get all the things that, like, again, this is why I think the conversation around this is disingenuous, because all of those are buzzwords for fans to be like, yes, you are correct. Why does Kawhi, who make $60 million a year, not play? He should just get off himself and just drag himself out there. It's not, you know, he's not in war. And it's like, guys, like, this dude like cannot physically do this. Like, and it's not good. But we're well past that point. Well past.
Well, even like, you know, maybe we all want the same thing. Like, maybe we just all want the healthiest players moving their best the most number of games possible over their lifetimes, right? It's just a question of like, what's the smartest way to do that, right? And like, you know, I now, and if it's a marathon, right? Like, some people run the first part of the marathon faster than the second part. Some people run the second part, whatever. Some people just turn it on in the last 2 miles, right? Like, we're different. But like, the commentary is that you should definitely go hard from the starting gun until you die.
Yes.
It's like, well, we did that and they died. So that's one thing we tried. Maybe we should try a little bit of like meeting it out a little slower for some people who are dealing with a little something, right? Like, or, you know, quite honestly, like, if you're, you know, if you have a baby and you never change a diaper, you're an asshole. But if you do change a diaper, you didn't sleep very well, right? Like, so it's like, all right, so if you slept terribly and you come in, like, you probably shouldn't go 40 minutes that night.
Yeah.
Right? Like, which means they're going to say something that's going to piss off the fans and Stephen A. Smith and everybody else. But it's like, it's just the reality of the world, right? Like, you know, and there's little tests you can do. Honestly, a pretty accurate one is if you can say, like, David could say it to a player because he doesn't determine playing time, but like a head coach could not. Their evidence is people will lie to the head coach, right? But if David said, like, hey man, how do you, like, 1 to 10, how do you feel today? Like, people actually give a scientifically valid answer over time, right? Like, Like if you're just like, hey man, if you're like 8 or above, like just play the hardest you can, like blow me away with how hard you play. But if you're like a 7 or below, just sit. Like I suspect if we did that, like we would just get more games out of everybody. It just wouldn't be all in order.
We do it. We do it in summer. Like that's part of my job as I oversee all these players wherever they are around the world training. They've got to not just tell me, they tell their personal physio, whoever's in charge of it, that question, how do you feel? Like, what pain levels are you?
Yeah.
And I just had a player injured, fell on his back really badly trying to dunk in a practice. It was during training camp. And so 2 weeks later, we talked about it. I said, okay, where's your pain level now? He said, I'm down to a 2. And I said, remind me what you were when you got hurt. He's like, well, I was a solid 7.
Yeah.
So only now is he back to playing 5-on-5 because it was more a bruise than anything. So you hit a bruise, you're right back to number 7.
Yeah.
You got to let it heal, you know?
Yeah. And I want people to feel impervious, right? Like you want to feel like a warrior. You want to go in there ready to kill somebody, right? Like I also have this issue with my own body. And I'm also someone who, like, my physical therapist is like, you push it too hard, right? Like there are days where I don't feel great, but I'm like, let me just fucking go crazy hard and see if that works out, right? And like sometimes it does. Sometimes you just move on, right?
Right.
But I think that, like, we should be a little artful in getting to the goal that we all want, which is robust people, right? Is what we want.
Yeah, and I think, again, these elite athletes, Kawhis, and these things that fans are being sold, they are the rare commodity that we want to see, to your point, at their peak. And they're the ones that teams have invested all of this capital and resources in. So it would behoove them to be smart about that so that they get the best return on that investment, right? Right now, the Clippers can't say they're getting a great return, right? They're going to be like, not been great.
And if we like gave the truth serum to whoever is complaining about this, we're like, who's the icon of just go, like they're going to probably be a touch racist and say Larry Bird, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something like this, right? Something like, just like, okay, well, Larry Bird's career ended way the fuck too early, right? And if you go do the math, look at the game. He missed a ton of games. And also, watch the video. He had so many games where he was like, oh, my back, like just not being Larry Bird.
He was Larry Bird walking around right now. Ain't looking so great.
But even if you just want elite play, you didn't get very much from him. Like you want more.
No.
Like
didn't he retire at 32?
Yes.
Like Jimmy Butler's 35. LeBron's almost 40.
Yeah. We absolutely mismanaged Larry Bird with his just
really
jump on the floor.
Years.
Like his back's already injured, and now we love him because he jumps on the floor. It's like that's like a war model where like he was willing to kill himself for us. Which tweaks some deep things in us, but it doesn't actually get us more good basketball.
Correct.
Right? Like
which is the goal.
Let's unwar that. Let's take the war out and be like, no, Larry, are you good to go?
Right.
Let's go those days, right? Like
I'm with you, man. We want more basketball, not less, and that's what this mentality is getting you. Oh well, folks.
Well, I'm glad I could clear that up for you.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Get back to Lola and editing.
Yeah, the dog's like, let me out. By the way, it's only urgent for her because the sun has arrived on her back porch.
She has to move to the
So now she's like, before she was like, I'm not going out there. It's way too cold. She's like,
Dogs rule our lives, folks. They tell us when to do everything. That's how it works. It is what it is. It's fine.
All right. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Henry.
All right. Take care.
Bye, Henry.
All right, David. Always love when Henry gets to come on and talk shop with us. That's such a good one, right? Like you could have had Larry Bird for longer if you were willing to be smart about it, but instead the warrior mentality got you what it got you, which is not a lot of elite basketball.
Machismo is never a good thing.
Agreed, 100%.
Anyway.
No, yeah, for sure. All right, so the season has begun, David, and we're not even 5% yet completed with the season, and it's so funny because I've got like fans of different teams like tweeting stuff at me like, what about this? And I'm like, guys, we played 3 games. It's not, first of all, not only is it not a large enough sample size for like any meaningful statistical data for the teams or the players, like there's not a whole lot I can tell you about teams. I can tell you some things that like, ooh, this is interesting, but that's beyond that. I can't tell you more than that. So David, let's talk about some of the things we're seeing early this NBA season. The Golden State Warriors. Now, it has been helped by the fact that I think their first 2 games were blowout wins, if I'm not mistaken. At least one was. The first game against Utah was. So they didn't have to, so the older guys, Steph and Draymond, don't have to play a lot of minutes because we're killing this team. But Steve Kerr is going 12 deep. What have you noted about that? And what have you heard Steve Kerr say about playing that many guys?
Yeah, I just was checking other teams too. The Pacers play a lot of guys. I think I put it in there. A lot of teams have played 9, 10, 11. Kerr has been committed to playing 12. He has said publicly He's committed to it, at least for the short term. They have a lot of guys. And I think there'll be a consolidation, just like there will be in Indiana, a few other places. Yesterday, he only played Kyle Anderson 4 minutes. So he said, so basically it was 11 for last night's game, which they lost to the Clippers. But he's kind of committed to it now with Curry being out. If he's out, we don't know. And Draymond really has not played well. Wiggins has. They're trying to figure some things out. But I just think it's interesting, given the context of the conversation we just had, that it's a long year and we've got 3 games in and we've lost maybe some good players. Some guys like Embiid and George haven't played yet. So, I mean, the playoffs are, you can't even, I hope I get to April. It's that far away.
It's a long time away.
It's a long way from now. So you got to start thinking about stuff, that kind of stuff now. I think it's great. I think it's great to play a bunch of guys and get them experience, and then you're prepared later on for an injury that does happen or foul trouble.
As I say all the time, like, you can do this now. And for certain coaches, it's easier than it is for others. Some coaches just can't do it for what it's against their whole being, right? They cannot play young players or young guys who are unproven because they know they're going to, it's like, yeah, but they need to get a chance to prove themselves. How are they going to prove if they don't play?
Well, and they could potentially lose their job.
Yeah, well, there's that, yes.
So the guy at OKC is set. Steve Kerr set. Rick Carlisle set. Those guys can do the right thing, and the other coaches should be empowered to say, well, they're doing, I should do it too, but they don't feel empowered all the time.
Yeah, no, that's the reality of it. The Indiana Pacers, a team who we talked about, and I said maybe 2 weeks ago, I said, give me the first 10 games. I want to see how they come out and how they look, because we're both very high believers in them getting back to the conference finals again. They've been spotty in their 3 games, up and down. Defensively, they've looked better, but the key piece for them that we said, if they're going to be what they were, Tyrese Halliburton has to be All-NBA. Now, again, caveat, only 3 games, but he has not looked like All-NBA Tyrese Halliburton through 3 games. Matter of fact, against the Knicks, I don't think he scored at all, if I'm not mistaken.
He didn't. So he didn't score against the Knicks. And I don't remember how many assists he had, but it was a low number, maybe 4. I think he maybe had 4 last night. He scored better last night. He shot better. That helped because he was really bad against the Knicks. Actually, he missed I think he went 1 of 16 or 1 of 17 from 3 the first 2 games. So it was better last night. But he doesn't look at all normal. I wrote an article about him and Jamal Murray after the preseason. And I think he looks more fluid. And I said this on the show on Thursday, but it's in his head. And so I talked to a player last night about it from the Pacers, and he said it's all in his head.
Okay.
To me, it looks pretty obvious because he's moving fine. His defense has gotten better. He's more feisty, which is good, feistier. But yeah, they're going to have to fix it. And they play Orlando tonight, and the second night of a back-to-back. That's a sledgehammer on defense.
Yeah, so Suggs is going to be in there.
They might play Boston soon.
Yeah,
they might play Boston right after that. So they could start out 1-5, 1-6. They needed to beat Philly to be 2-2 going into tonight against Orlando, and they should have beat Philly, and they just kind of died at the end with really bad mistakes. And then Maxey went crazy, and the Pacers did some dumb things. I thought. And either way, Tyrese he's not even close to All-Star Tyrese.
No.
He's just okay player Tyrese. They have no chance without him being an All-Star level player.
Maxey was excellent last night for Philly. I think he was 45, if I'm not mistaken, in that game. He was
second half.
Really
First
good.
half, he did nothing. Early third quarter, nothing. The Pacers went to the second unit. Maxey went off. And for whatever reason, Coach Carlisle didn't do anything. A lot of these coaches don't in the regular season. In the playoffs, they immediately try to put the fire on. The regular season, they don't. Once Maxey caught fire, it didn't matter who was guarding him. He's making step-back threes and all of it. And they're bad, though. The Sixers are bad.
Oh, yeah,
for
sure.
The Pacers are bad. Because without Embiid and
George, they're not
much different when those guys are there, I think. But Maxey's terrific.
No, yeah. We've been high on Maxey for a long time on this podcast. Yeah, so the Halliburton thing bears watching, right? Again, I said I need to see 10 games. We've only played 3. We have 7 more to go. Like, I want to see, does his confidence grow each game as he goes forward? Or are we still kind of like, nah, he's still not sure and he's trusting? So the longer that persists, as we said, problematic for Indiana going forward. Again, early, but a team that we were worried about to start the season has not won yet, the Denver Nuggets. You sent us a clip in our True Hoop chat.
Oh, yeah.
With a blown assignment by one of the Denver defenders, and Jokic just looking around like, what the fuck you doing? Like, again, nothing to pour alarms on anywhere or sound alarms, but we were worried about this team. We talked about Michael Malone's comments about modern day NBA being soft and you not liking that particularly. We know that he and Calvin Booth do not get along. I just, for a team that I thought needed to start well, this is not the start that they needed to begin the season. And Murray, he had a decent scoring game, I think, in the last one, but in the first two, did not shoot well. To me, didn't look like he was moving well. The worries are still there for Denver, David.
I mean, it's the same situation as Tyrese. Murray has to be borderline all-star, not all-star, borderline all-star. I don't think anyone would argue. Again, it's been 3 games, but they haven't won a game yet. So yeah, there is some serious problems there that they're gonna have to address. And the clip I sent you guys, Jokic just had that look of, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And I don't think that's great.
No, and he is in the prime of his career, right? Could very well win a 4th MVP this season. As we asked before, does he say, "Hey, what's going on here?" Now, he doesn't strike me as a player who would be like, "Get me out of here." But again, you never know what anybody's thinking at any given time based on the situation. So I don't know. I know he is competitive and wants to win. So if this team continues to underperform around him, it'll be curious to see what type of influence, if any, he decides to exert on the Nuggets going forward. A team that we liked just because we thought they'd be more competitive. They potentially win more games. We'd see a jump from Jaden Ivey. We potentially see a jump from Cade. Do you like what you're seeing from Detroit so far, just in terms of how they're playing?
Okay. So I don't know that I've ever said this before on the show, but I've written these words many times, and Henry or Travis have always edited them out. You're going to know why in a minute. But I'm taking it from a Seinfeld episode. So Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey are hotsy-totsy. They're both playing well. The rest of the guys, hotsy, Nazi, N-O-T-S-Y, N-O-T-S-Y. And speaking of Nazi, N-O-T-S-Y, when you talked about comrades and communism, we were saying if they could build a fucking train from where I live to Orlando, and that was called communism, then call me Comrade True Hoop. Yeah. So I have to fucking drive to Orlando and deal with an hour of traffic and all that shit and stay awake and all of that. So Cunningham and Ivy, I mean, I wrote about Jaden Ivey last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't remember. He looks like he's coming.
Yeah.
Huge improvement last year from, I think the category is called absolutely fucking terrible as a rookie, even though he made, I think it was 6th in like rookie of the year voting or whatever.
Yeah.
No, he was awful.
Right.
Last year, he was just not bad. That's huge improvement.
That's a huge jump
for a young man. This year, he's averaging over 20 a game. He's not even shooting. I think he's shooting okay, but he's playing very well. I forget what his 3-point numbers are, but I'm a huge fan. And so him and Cade, nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw Thompson's out right now. They've got some issues in the big position. They've got to figure out. Jalen Duren, I was never high on Jalen Duren. Everyone else was. It looked like I was an idiot at first. Nothing's really growing. I'm just not a huge fan of him, but I think he'll be a good backup big for his career. He's very young. Like he's 20 years old, 21 years old. But it's good to have that backcourt looking like they're cooking. And then we'll see what happens, as the year goes on. But you got to start with something.
Yeah.
So if that backcourt set, that's a good foundation.
Yeah, and come on, this is a team that was atrocious last year. So
they won 14 last year.
Right. So if that backcourt is looking like that is the backcourt you're going to have that you can build with, that's an excellent sign for them to begin moving forward.
And I just want to throw this out here. A lot of talk about Detroit in the news for political reasons too. I have dear friends who are from Detroit, live in Detroit, who claim it's really doing well now. And then this weekend I was at a birthday party for a longtime a friend of ours, and their son's in med school there.
Okay.
In the heart of Detroit, fucking loves it.
Nice.
Loves it. He's like it's way underrated. I said, no, it's starting to be rated well. He didn't know that. He's 23 years old. But so good for Detroit. Lions are pretty good, I heard.
One of the great American cities.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, right. Let's go Pistons. Let's just win 25, 30 games. And it's a hell of a
could
season.
You imagine? Wow.
Because their future is going to be good.
That would be amazing wind in their sails going forward. The other team that we want to talk about briefly, they started the year 3-0. We're high on them. We think they're going to go to the NBA Finals, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Talked about teams playing with depth. Mark Daniel is playing 11, 12 guys as well. We thought he would, though, because they have a lot of talented players on their roster.
Right, playing that number before the game is over, because then they blow people out. Mm-hmm. I think they're the number one net rating.
Yes, they are.
And then he plays everyone else too. Chet, I still think tries to do a little too much more than he should, but he's very, very good. Jalen Williams is this leader of men. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. I'm not sure if it was yesterday, 2 games ago. He brought 2 rookies into. It must have been 2 games ago. They scored the first career points, and he brought them into the post-game press conference to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Super cool that he would do that. Mm-hmm. He's supposed to be an amazing guy. Shea's an amazing guy. Caruso's an amazing guy. Like, it's a lot of amazing going on there.
Yeah.
And I noticed, I mentioned this to you guys, they have a 2-way player drafted 38th, which is normally a guaranteed contract. But they just have room for him, I'm sure, is the reason. And so he's a 2-way player named AJ Mitchell from UC Santa Barbara, who was getting first quarter minutes in the preseason. I thought, that's weird. He's still getting first half minutes.
Yeah.
Fourth quarter minutes in close games. He played well last night. They're just an embarrassment of riches. And they lost Trey Mann.
Yes.
Because I think they realized we just can't afford to pay someone who was a first round pick a couple years ago. And he's doing really well for Charlotte.
Yeah.
They're really good. When you can lose Trey Mann, that tells you something.
Yeah, and just really quickly, I love how Charlotte's been competing through their first 3 games. Charles Lee injecting them with a different level of enthusiasm. No, look, this Oklahoma City team, we love them. And, David, obviously they have 8 bazillion draft picks, so they get tons of bites at the apple. But what they do is not some revolutionary thing, right? Like, every other team could do this. You can find talent. It exists. Oklahoma City is not special in that way. They just choose to do it.
AJ Mitchell was drafted 38th from UC Santa Barbara. Not a Power 5 conference, not a great basketball. They're a solid basketball program, and he's getting rotation minutes for the best team in the West. 37 other teams, 29 other teams could have drafted him in the first round or the top 37. And Casey Wallace looks like he's legit. Isaiah Joe, who has started for them. Aaron Wiggins started for them last night. Yeah, that's good player development right there. And good coaching.
And it, again, like that is, of course, we know you need those super duper stars. Of course, everyone knows that. But the rest of your roster's got to have other guys, right? Everybody can't be a freaking 5-star player. Like, that's not how it works. But these guys are here.
Right. And the coaching. Like, I don't know when we're going to the Lakers, but they've been loaded for years.
Yep.
And they may have a coach that kind of gets it. We'll see.
Yep.
So it's early, but OKC's got an elite coach.
All right, folks, we'll be back after a brief commercial break. All right, this is going to make David's heart sing because he has for years said, this is a coach's league. And I think, so people hear that, and, not me, but fans will hear that and say, oh, so you're saying players don't matter. And that's not what you're saying when you say it's a coach.
Of course not.
So
I'm not an idiot.
Correct.
I may look like one, but I'm not one.
When you say this is a coach's league, break that out into layman's terms so a fan can understand what you mean by that.
It means it's too hard because of draft rules, free agent rules, trade rules, and free agent rules, cap issues, to overwhelm opponents with talent. Okay. The famous Houston college team with Olajuwon and Drexler and Larry Mitchell, those guys. I don't think Guy Lewis at that point was a good coach at all, but they were so talented that they made it to the NCAA championship game, I think 2 times with different guys. Tarkanian actually was a pretty good coach, but they overwhelmed you with talent at UNLV. Can't do that in the NBA. It's just the rules don't allow it. You can't afford it, whatever. So you're looking for margins, right? You're looking for that little space in between the gray that can kind of give you a competitive advantage. The head coach is a big part of that. Separate from the talent acquisition standpoint, which is management's job, which is important, someone's got to coach them up better. So the old saying, he can take his and beat urine, take urine to beat his, and the old Bear Bryant thing. I mean, I first started hearing that when I was 22, starting to coach. I wanted to be that guy. I could beat you with my guys, or I could beat you with your guys. That's what I set out to do. It's not so easy, but the better coaches can. And there's lots of different ways they do it. It makes a big difference. There's a reason why I think in most places, the good coaches tend to win wherever they go.
Yep.
You might fire them because they had a bad year or not as good a year as you wanted, but they're typically winning plenty of games. And the Lakers just have failed. And I think we don't know yet. It's way too early.
Right.
Because bad things going to happen.
Sure.
Now let's see how they react to it. But for now, the Lakers anyway look like a much sharper, crisper, more focused team. And because I think JJ's had an impact.
Yeah, and so that's what the heart of this coaches league thing is JJ Redick, 3-0 through his first 3 games, which again that matters less than when someone asks me about them when I watch them, David. They just look like a different type of team. Now, of course, Anthony Davis is playing well, all that, but Dalton Knecht, who is a rookie, playing well. Rui Hachimura playing well. David always says it's about coaching. First, we're in the business to inspire, right? That's the first thing. And a lot of people don't think about inspiration at the pro level, but just because they're pros don't mean they don't need inspiration. They probably need more inspiration when you actually think about it, given all the things they have to deal with. What are you noticing that the Lakers are doing that you're like, wow, they look like a different club in comparison to when Darvin was running them?
I've not studied them closely, so I'll be able to. I'm going to do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm writing about them.
You're going to write about them this week. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for remembering. So I'll study them closely. But when I have had them on, which I've had 2 of their games on, they just seem a little more purpose driven with AD, getting him involved, which I think is super important. Also, freer, Knecht, and Hachimura specifically. Oh, and also the kid from Texas A&M. Reed. What's his name?
Oh God. Yeah.
AR.
Yeah. Austin Reeves.
Jesus, Austin Reeves. Thank you. It's been a long night. Yeah, they look freer. I don't know if it's anything to do with coaching or not. There are coaches that work really hard. There are coaches that are lazy. Gender and ethnicity have nothing to do with those things. Neither does playing experience. I've seen really lazy coaches who also didn't play professionally and really lazy men that did. JJ Redick is not one of those guys. He suffers for his suit. I think it was part of his genius. Ty Lue is another one that is always tinkering.
Mm-hmm.
I like tinkerers. I do. But I don't think JJ is much a tinkerer as someone who remembers what it was. This is just my guess. He knows what it was like playing for Coach K, who could really bust your ass, but also really breathe spirit. And he's the best, I thought, of breathing spirit in guys. That's why Duke's players tend to fail so often. They'll never have a coach like that. In the NBA, those guys don't give a fuck about you. Coach K acted like he cared. Maybe he didn't, but he acted like he did, and that matters. JJ is kind of breathing spirit into some of those guys, and so they're playing that way. Mm-hmm. What did LeBron say to Bronny right before he went the first time? Like, be free.
Mm-hmm.
That's good advice.
Mm-hmm.
The point of practice is to get yourself to a position where you can be free when the games count. And so for now, all good. Let's see when they go. I was telling earlier, we're late December, early January. We're 6 weeks away from All-Star break. Mm-hmm. The Lakers are on a 3 or 4 game losing streak, some of them by blowouts.
Right.
We'll see how JJ handles it then.
Right.
Because you can't just outwork those kinds of things. You have to think through it. There's got to be a thought process, a mindfulness to things, a collective group of let's figure this out together. Right now, I feel like the Lakers are humming pretty good.
Yeah. So JJ's got, I don't know, because that's just a clinical term, so I don't know if I would say that this is about him, but maybe in the way he talks about basketball, he's a little bit OCD, or maybe a better word to say it is very detail-oriented.
Yeah.
Why, for a superstar player like AD or LeBron, does being super detailed matter for some, maybe not all superstars, but maybe matters for these particular superstars?
Yeah, we were talking about that this morning. People have, I don't even know from personal experience, people have asked coaches who've worked for me, what is it about David that gets guys to listen, especially ones that have been so successful? And the answer typically when you ask someone like Ryan Pannone is his attention to detail, because these guys fucking want every margin on their side. Every possible way to beat you, they want that. So if I'm able to provide some tiny little recognized observation that if fixed or solved, same thing, or tweaked, gives you that edge. And now you're giving me an extra knife in my arsenal, another gun, that kind of thing, an extra weapon matters. So if JJ is able to notice, we're just not holding our screen well enough here. Or I've said this to you guys before, and I did this morning when I was sending clips out. If I have a player, their arm is at, let's say, 3 o'clock or 8 o'clock, but it needs, I'm sorry, not 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock, but I want them at maybe 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, and you're going to get more deflections, which you will. That is something is immediately actionable. And all it takes is mindfulness, not necessarily reps. Because a rep is you're going through a skill and you're guiding them through the skill to get them to do it, whether they develop a touch or get the angle right, whatever. This is just a mindfulness, hands up, hands up, hands up. And so if you have a player, this is an important point. If you have a superstar talent that isn't interested in those details, well, I would never draft that guy.
Yeah.
I would never draft that guy because he isn't desperate, urgent to win. And I think that generally speaking, and I mean by generally, it's more than just 51%, whatever. 85, 90% of the guys are dying to win.
Yeah.
And then the top 5%, they're obsessed with it. So I think JJ is obsessed with it. And I think LeBron is obsessed with it. I don't know about AD,
right?
But you can be surrounded by the right people and move in that direction. And so now think about this. You can't do that and also have freedom easily.
Yeah.
That takes some talent as a coach and as a group, as staff. Let's be attention to detail oriented, but also just trust ourselves. That's really what we're looking for. That combination right there. Play with edge and urgency, play with passion and purpose, but also let's play jazz.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when that's your voice and you're consistent with that, you're not yanking a guy out when he makes a mistake like you do in college, whatever. It's easier to get to that point. I think that they're early in the season, they found that the easygoing attitude, but still attention to detail oriented.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I don't want to make a big deal because it's just early. It's only 3 games, but we've seen LeBron in the past, not necessarily be responsive when a coach is saying something.
100%.
Let's see, for their second game, you can see LeBron's coming off his normal rest, and JJ's talking to him, and you can hear him be like, "Yep, got you on that. I see what you mean." It's like I'm like, ooh. And JJ
Really?
also is speaking a language that LeBron understands, right? Coming from, JJ stopped playing 5-6 years ago, whatever it was, like not that long ago, right? So he's speaking a very clear language that LeBron understands. Again, it's 3 games. Talk to me in January when they lose 3 in a row, as David said, and all that. Maybe it's different, but the signs right now suggest good things.
Yeah. Yeah, the player thing is interesting. It does help when you're a former player. I didn't play past high school.
It has not hurt you at all.
I'm always amazed at that. I'm humbled by it. I try to. I'll say phrases like low key. My players laugh if I write it low key. Because they write that. I'll write bet sometimes. I'll always get it. I also have 2 23-year-olds and lots of their friends at my house all the time. So I know how they speak it, but I normally don't do that. I don't try to pretend to be 25. I'm almost 60. So I am who I'm supposed to be. But you're not wrong. When I was in Alabama, a lot of the GAs were telling me, we were managers, and your son comes right in and just feels so comfortable on the court with maybe the most talented team in the country. They're number 2 right now behind Kansas in one poll. And I said, what do you think it is? They didn't know what I did for a living at this point either. He said, they all said he just played. And so maybe that's true, but maybe also we've seen me enough with the guys to know kind of the voice you need to have, whatever. And I just listened to a coaching staff speak the other day on college level, and I think they're a little bit monotone. I actually talked to one of them. You have to be interesting, not theatrical and dramatic,
right?
But you don't want to lose their attention as players. So this is all a skill thing. And I think JJ, I think they respect him. I think they respect him. He had to work for everything. And a lot of these guys grew up remembering him very well as a guy that just got everything he could get out of that body. Like JJ was a very good athlete. He worked at that, not just skilled and competitive as hell. So I don't know how good of a listener he is. I'm guessing right now he's doing pretty well. If he maintains that, if I would guess that he would. It's really good for the Lakers because I don't know that they've had success with that in the last since Vogel. I think Vogel was very good.
Yep.
And just let's just say this: LeBron had like a right to left crossover the other day for a layup and a monster dunk and backdoor with the Bronny game. Like, what this guy's doing is just second to nothing I've ever seen. It's unreal.
He is ridiculous. To still be doing what he's doing at this age is just, it's phenomenal. Again, this is not listen, David and I remember Kareem's final season, right? It was a retirement tour. He's getting rocking chairs at every arena he goes to. Like, I mean, yeah, this guy will go in every once in a while, but like, it wasn't. I mean, LeBron is still he made all NBA last year. Like, he's still a highly impactful player, which is incredible. All that he's accomplished. So kudos. So Lakers fans, be happy right now. Looking like you got good things in your future for now. Last thing, David, we talked about this player this morning, and it's, kind of a sad tale. It's kind of tied into kind of bringing the conversation full circle about injured players and teams not getting the most out of guys. And the Ben Simmons story we talked about in this podcast is just a sad story. This is a player who was all NBA, all defense, just outstanding and a physical specimen, right? Like 6'10", super athletic, like.
Listen, I've had very, very serious recruiting experts tell me that he was the best high school player since LeBron James, period, end of story. No discussion. Like, that's how confident they were.
And he, was super strong, like everything. Like, I remember the first time I covered a game and he was on the Sixers, that I saw him and Embiid come out together. And I was like, holy shit, look how big these two motherfuckers are. Like, they're just massive. And just like incredible. And then that's when he was, again, that all NBA, all defensive caliber player. And, I think we both sadly realize that he's probably never going to return to those levels again. This year, if his $40 million contract is expiring this year. So what do you think the future is for him in terms of what will a team do? And as that contract is expiring, is this something that a team who might be in salary cap hell, looking to be like, we have a player who's got more years left on the deal, but we're not sure because we have problems. Maybe we take a flyer and we bring Ben Simmons in and we get out of some cap relief, and the Nets get a younger player or a player who's established that's got a year or two left is really good. What do you think the future is of Ben Simmons long term and then this year?
I said on the show today, what is he averaging, like 5, 6, and 6?
Mm-hmm.
I said that to you guys.
You did this morning on our call. Yep.
I just looked it up.
5, 6, and 6.
It was 5.7 instead of 6. I'll be honest. It's possible I looked last night and forgot because I'm normally at that kind of accurate when I'm guessing averages. Right. But I was describing he's like perfectly below average. That's what I said. He's perfectly below average, 5, 6, and 6. I was right. In 24 minutes, I just looked that up.
Yep.
So with 4 turnovers a game, remember those videos of him shooting threes? Guess how many threes he's taking?
0.
Zip. Yeah. Same as you and I, by the way. We have the same number. He's going to retire when this is done. Now, if there's an injury issue or a total rust issue, I have to allow for that. But given everything, it just seems hard to believe that anyone's going to pay him anything.
Yeah.
And with the money he's made, I don't know, go back to Australia and play. But he's not an NBA player right now, unless he's doing more things defensively than I realize, which is possible. And then he's a spot player. But, Kyle Anderson type.
Yeah.
Kyle Anderson played really well in some games, played 4 minutes last night. That could be Ben Simmons on a minimum deal.
Yeah.
That's my guess anyway.
It's a shame, because this was a bright star that we thought really could do some major things. And, to your point, David, maybe we allow for some of it being rust, right? Because this is a guy who has not played consistent basketball in 5 years,
long time.
6. It's been a long time since he's been able to play consistently uninterrupted basketball. So, that takes a while to get your confidence and all that back. All right, folks, we hope you are enjoying the early NBA season. Ton of games tonight, and then we'll have a bunch more to talk about on Thursday.